listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, September 1st, 2023. September.
Oh my goodness. September. That is the month of your birth.
Indeed. And
In fact, it's coming. It's around the corner.
It is. Not on Labor Day, unfortunately, which means I have to work on my stupid birthday, but that's okay. But usually, like, my birthday falls on Labor Day or, like, the weekend leading up to it. You know what? It's fine. but
we're the age where I guess, like, it doesn't matter, right?
I mean, technically, since I'm going to be getting paid for my birthday, technically, but... Technically, I mean, it's
not for your birthday.
They're gonna hand me money on as my way out back to my car, but dear listeners,
thank you, Dr. Bethel.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, why are you talking? Are you talking to my dad?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Bethel.
There we go, dear listeners. This week we're gonna kind of.
It's short.
Take one for us. Yeah, we're busy. We're tired. And I started up teaching again. My day job started up. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. The first week is always rough.
It's a bit raspy.
Yeah. You know. And so I've been losing my voice every day. It's just natural. A person that has a low voice that I have to yell across a room, it tends to go pretty quickly. But we did not want to leave you with nothing. And
no,
actually,
we don't.
I hear you want to bring something. You've been doing something that sounds like it's been frustrating you.
Well, I haven't. Actually, I have. I haven't, and I have.
So just use this as a place to air your grief. This is therapy,
right? So there's a weird thing. Like, if you've listened to the show, you know I have a weird thing for
feet.
Certain types of games.
Oh, yes, that too.
Certain types of games. I have a thing for kind of like the survival game. I've talked about Subnautica at length.
Yeah. Would you consider State of Decay?
To a lesser
survival.
Extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not like what I'm talking about.
It's
here.
more survivalist.
Like, the idea of this is the game where the first thing you have to do is figure out how to survive.
Right.
And then figure out what the game's about.
Right. No Man's Sky is kind of like this, right?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Actually, No Man's Sky is a good example as well. And I like the genre. Mm-hmm. And at some point in the last 6 months, I was on Steam. It was like, oh, hey, here's this new game or whatever. Right? I was like, oh, okay. And I actually got like a bundle with 2 games. One is still in early access, and I have not played it because I don't play games in early access. I bought it, but I've not played it.
I don't like to eat a cake before it's done cooking.
Right, like yes, very much. But the other game that was in the bundle, which is not in early access, it's released. Although it's still getting updated like now all games are. It's a game called Green Hell.
Okay.
Which, yikes, right? The name already is like, so it's very much a survival game. It is like, it's like these are people that played Subnautica and thought like, well, but what if it were more about dying a lot, right?
So you're talking about the way Dan plays Subnautica,
right? So basically the premise is you are, I think, an anthropologist, or at least the story mode, at least what I've played. Mm-hmm. You're an anthropologist who shows up with his wife and or girlfriend. I'm not sure what the relationship is. Mm-hmm. There's a little intro where you show up to do research in like the Amazon, the rainforest. With a tribe of people in the area, and there's like they set up some like, oh, and the tribe doesn't like people, like it doesn't like things,
right?
And you go through a little introduction with what you and your like this base camp where you're like learning the basic game skills of the game, and it ends with basically you chasing after your wife/girlfriend. Where something bad has happened, you don't know what, And essentially the game opens with you waking up by, like, the river or whatever, the stream, not knowing how you got there. And you have nothing. Go. Right? So it's like, oh, this is peak survival game. Right? So, like, I loved the premise. I'm like, oh, it's like Subnautica. It's like these games I've played that I enjoy, like No Man's Ski. But now it's in the Amazon, you know?
Right. That's what I was like, kind of wondering about, like, how hard or fixed is, like, the geographical location of this? And with that in mind, as you said, like, there's, like, local tribes. I don't know how much you've interacted with maybe that side of things, but how much does it come across that maybe they did the research that there's, or is it like Tomb Raider level, like, or like, you know, old pulp level, like, oh, they're savages or something like that?
Well, I think the premise is that your partner goes to live with one of the local tribes to try to essentially, like, fix some sort of issue. Like the idea that you had come previously and you had done something that upset them or something, and she's like trying to fix it, and she speaks, or she at least like can understand the language, whatever. Right. So it doesn't feel so, you know. I don't know though. I haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
Because guess what?
What?
I haven't gotten more than an hour into the game. I mean, I've put, I think, 7 to 10 hours in. But I have not gotten more than an hour into the game.
Wow.
And it's the first time where I've actually, you know, playing a game that I ostensibly like, at least a genre. And I'm like, well, shit. This is hard.
What about it is different, do you think? Aside from not being underwater.
Well,
And I guess I'm asking, that was cheeky, but I meant, like, what is making it harder for someone that is ostensibly enjoys these games and is also good at them?
Oh, a lot of hours into Subnautica and Subnautica Below Zero. I don't know. I wonder if this game, like, it has, I think, a steeper curve. And this is actually a thing of games like this. Like, they give you the little tutorial of, like, learn the basic skills. But they also then dump you into, like, hard.
Yeah.
Pretty fast. With not a lot to go on. And you do, like, unlike a game like Subnautica, where you start with a place to go to I don't know, collect your thoughts.
Right.
To, like, get the basic shit together.
Your little capsule.
Capsule.
Yeah.
This game does not do that. And it's a weird thing because with this kind of game, right, like you need to have a place to establish yourself. And ostensibly, I guess they're saying wherever you want. Like, right. But for me, I guess my gamer mentality is, well, I want to find the start location. I want to find the spot where, like, I'm supposed to do the work. Right. And maybe it's wherever you want, right? Yeah. I've actually I got so fed up I actually Googled, like, hey, this, you know, Green Hell beginner's guide, right? Like, I need help.
Wow.
And what I've seen is they're like, oh no, like, just start building your house. Because there's all sorts of, like, crafting structure stuff. Yeah. Like, that's what these games do. Like, you start with nothing, but then you build a fortress, right? Right. The idea that the guide I found, or one or two of them, said, no, just start where you're at. Like, don't go anywhere. Like, there is nowhere to go. Or at least not, like, there's places to go, but, like, no, you need to start building where you start. And I was like, oh, shit. That's not what I've done. Like, I assumed I wandered out into the jungle and I've died a multiverse of times looking for the place where and actually there is a place that's kind of like the first story point where I assume, like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to, like, build my house.
Yeah.
Except every time I get there, like I'm already like half dead. Like it's like, oh, find water. Like, well, shit.
You're bleeding out. You got one arm broken. You're like, let's start building, I guess.
Right. Well, and the game has like this game, unlike Subnautica, leans into the like, no, survival. Right. Like, oh, you went into this water. You've got leeches. You have to go look at yourself and pick them off.
Wow.
And you got attacked by a jaguar. Yeah, you fought it off. It wrecked you. You now have like a gaping wound. You have to bandage. Oh, but like bandages, you don't have those. It's like, yikes. Or you need food. Here's some mushrooms. You don't know what they do. Try eating them. Well, they're poison. You're going to vomit for the next 20 minutes.
When you die, does it reload from a save, or is it kind of like like a roguelike?
No, it reloads from a save.
Okay. Because that's the one.
Which in my case is the start.
Have you started a new game entirely at all yet? Do you know if there's any sort of like progressive mechanics? Do you start from a different starting point, stuff like that?
I've started a new game multiple times, in so much that I have not succeeded. And also, it has a weird save mechanic where technically to save, I learned...
You have this typewriter and you need to find a ribbon.
Well, no, you have to have like a place to save. You have to have a house or a bed.
Shit. Oh, okay. So yes,
right.
You are starting from scratch.
Well, at least past the intro. Right?
Yeah.
No, actually, it was like 4 or 5 hours in until I realized that you could at least do a save and quit because I gotta go do something else. So it's this weird experience of I'm playing a game that I think I want to like, but boy, it's treating me real bad.
Well, sounds like fun. So
I mean, ish.
At this point,
there will come a point where I will figure this shit out.
Yeah. Well, that's the question I had. I guess is you sound intrigued, but you don't sound like you're having fun, which was making the question like, is there a point where you're like, fuck it, I'm not going to play this game because it makes me mad too much?
I mean, probably.
Yeah.
I guess I think of it like the way I hear people talk about what's the one everyone loves, Elden Ring, or that whole genre of
the Dark Souls.
Dark Souls,
yeah,
right. Like where it's like, oh man, this game will just punch you in the dick repeatedly, and somehow you like that. And I always say like, "Whoa, that sounds stupid," but here I am playing a game that's just like actually,
harvesting resources. Hell yes,
right? Like somehow this is the thing that works for me, but also like has that same suffering.
You're just like, what if Stardew Valley was oppressive?
Yes, actually. And apparently I kind of like that.
Apparently, yeah.
I'm still figuring it out. Well, so either way.
Eager to hear some updates there. Yeah.
It's funny. This is the first time I've had a game that says like, "Oh, you've got like 8 hours in." I'm like, "Do I?" Like every time I play the game, I start from hour 0. You know.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear
if I ever make it.
Yeah.
Anywhere
to hour 1.
Right. I mean, the fact that it took me 5 hours to learn how to save and quit.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, what can you do? At least until you can get distracted by another game at some point.
Right.
I wish I had something I could update with. Most of the last week or so has been prepping for school getting going again, and to that end, it's like we've been kind of wallowing in comfort food. We've been rewatching Gravity Falls. The only game I've been playing is a game I heard a lot about over the summer, over the last year, a game called Vampire Survivors.
Okay.
Because it was on sale on the Switch for like $3. I'm like, sure, I'll check it out.
I think that's the normal price.
Exactly, yeah. But with that in mind, I'll put it in the show notes. What's more interesting than playing the game, because it's fine. I see the appeal, but it's not that engaging for me. But a YouTube channel that I've talked about on the show before called Noclip it's a crowdfunded video game documentary company through Patreon. But they did a really interesting documentary about vampire survivors because it's kind of like a one-man show. It's this guy that was working, I believe, for Blizzard or something like that. I can't remember which company. It was one of those, big kind of multiplayer based companies. And he just kind of wanted to dick around and was making games. And so the game even though it looks fairly cool, it's got a neat retro aesthetic. It's a game built on him like really crowdsourcing, not in terms of financing, but like assets. Like he's buying sprite sets off of services that sell sprite sets and music and stuff like that. And it's really kind of cool how it all kind of came together fairly organically. I'll put a link to the video as well as the video itself in the show notes. But it's a really well done documentary. The best part is that the creator of the game apparently is very camera shy, and so he wouldn't do a video interview with Danny O'Dwyer, the host of Noclip. And so what he did is they recorded the audio, and instead they recreated the stories he was telling by making a puppet that's like in the shape of they made it look like it's like the Count from Sesame Street. It's a Dracula puppet, and yeah, it's very cute, and but it really interesting story, and you get to see sort of all the iterations of what this game was, especially like the game. They talk about the inspirations because what it does as a game is not original. Basically, as a guy seeing a game on the Google Play Store and going like, oh, well, I think I could make something like that, and then building on it and just having it explode during the last year or so.
Right.
So
which it really it did.
Yeah. So I've been playing that mostly because I saw the documentary first, and I've been hearing discourse about the game, and finally getting to check out the game. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. It's fine, but it's definitely not punishing me nor intriguing me the way that Green Hell has been punishing and intriguing you. But yeah, so
apparently,
yeah. So we're probably gonna wrap up there, dear listeners. We're gonna take the rest of the week off and just kind of recoup. But
yes,
I should say, if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page of this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at dbethelcomics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark@dice.camp.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you can listen to our show, which we simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to it on YouTube, if you already find yourself there, please, as the kids like to say, like and subscribe or ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4, both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music and more at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review. A text review or using the service's proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. How's Ahsoka going?
I think we're halfway through.
Are we?
Yeah. Hey, we're halfway there. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
We'll see when you watch it and we talk about it in 4 or 5 weeks.
I feel like it's going to be nothing but like you'll be like, you know this character from the show? I'm like, yeah, that's from Rebels. What about this character? Yeah, that guy's from Rebels. Has it been really kind of like a nostalgia fest for you? Are they packing in the references and and then the story beats and stuff from that show into this? Is it really Rebels season 6, 5, whatever?
I don't know if that's. I mean, the first episode definitely had a lot, but I'd say the third episode, like once you get past the lead-in, like once you know who the characters are, episode 3 definitely doesn't feel like just Rebels season 5, right? Other than the fact that like it features 2 to 3 characters from Rebels, right? So,
well, good. And you're enjoying it?
yeah, so far I think it's fun. There are things that it's one of those things where you're not sure what they're doing, right? It's
right.
I guess halfway through, but I kind of like what at least I'm seeing, like what they're suggesting. And this is not a big spoiler, but one of the things actually I kind of like out of episode 3 is they essentially talk about the idea of someone being a Jedi who's not biologically predetermined, right? If you've seen Star Wars, the idea that like, oh no, we find like even in the old Republic or the Republic, whatever, the pre-Empire, like they're like, oh, we find kids who have power, like, you know, who exhibit the things. It's like, oh,
yeah,
so
midichlorians,
right? Like you're finding people with this pre-existing condition. What I like is that this is establishing someone who doesn't have that. You know, it is, but they're saying like, well, maybe they can be a Jedi as well.
Okay.
And it just because Star Wars, especially like the original trilogy, the only basically like what 50% of the people we see are sons of Anakin Skywalker or kids of, right? It's Luke and Leia, and then you know you've got obviously Obi-Wan and Yoda. The original trilogy or the prequel trilogy sets up that like, oh, actually Anakin's so fucking magical, right? But also we all have these goopy space bugs that give us the power.
Right.
You're like, well, shit. And then the sequel trilogy is like, actually, everyone's related to someone from before. And so you're like, well, shit. You know, it's all about who your father is. And that's why I like the idea that this show is at least teasing the idea that, like, no, somebody who doesn't have that, whose father wasn't a millionaire, basically, maybe they can also do this.
So I guess until you learn that you can have force powers, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Three and 2 and 1 and. Were you just feeling the clap, or were you like reminded of something you wanted to say?
No, I'm overreacting to the soundness of that clap. I mean, it felt like a good clap to me, sir.
Oh, no doubt. But I'm just saying, put it up against previous claps, we might have had better.
Oh well, sure. We've been clapping for 10 years.
Well, you know, I mean that's part of the game of podcasting. You're always looking for the better clap. If you, oh shit, what's my outro? What do I start with?
Who's your daddy?
And what does he do?